So I'm Jason Clark. I'm UBS Head of Property Management now, my role now for UBS. My role for the past 6 years has been Programme Management for the new headquarters building in Broadgate, which is via Broadgate. I'm going to talk not specifically about the project, but more about the soft landings approach we took with our facilities management team and how we engaged them from the outset in the days when BIM, soft landings, intelligent buildings hadn't emerged yet. So a kind of very practical guide of how a lot of what was talked about in the session earlier turns into reality and pain in the life of a project. So I'll skip through it quick. So very quickly about UBS, headquartered in Switzerland, 50 plus countries around the world, 65,000 people globally, 7,500 people in London, predominantly in the Broadgate area. We had them spread across 7 buildings. All the different business functions were in different buildings, and that's about 1 million square feet. Now, at a time when the financial markets were in crisis, a few guys had the very bright idea that it was a good opportunity to consolidate into one building, obviously savings across the rents and things like that, but also for the first time ever, all of our business functions was in one hub. Now, what we needed with that was flexibility because the markets were in turmoil. We didn't know what banking looked like in the future, so we had to have a very flexible building that could respond to the changes that we might have. A little bit about the project. So, as I said, when it started, BIM, intelligent buildings, all of these words that are thrown about now were not really on the agenda. I think BIM started to emerge in 2011, and when it did, people just focused on the technology and what they could do with the technology and how they could add that as a service. They didn't. Soft landings got lost in that whole process and didn't really start talking about soft landings until 2012, 2013, when people started to talk about them together. And for me, this BIM, soft landings, intelligent buildings is all one. The UBS, we have an in-house team of subject matter experts in terms of all of the functional leads. We had an outsourced service provider. We had an aspiration to move towards an IFM model, so that was happening during the flight of the project. But we wanted to reduce our overall cost, but still maintain the quality, the client experience, and the quality of service that our clients come to expect. The building's 700,000 square feet, up to 6,000 staff, 50% of them are agile. Thin client, again, wasn't on the agenda. Halfway through the project, we had the opportunity to introduce thin client, which meant that we could hit our agile requirements of the building. As a tenant, as our existing landlord, so we was able to, from the outset, embed our requirements into the base build deliverables and then combine our fit-out design with the base build delivery and then obviously all of our occupation strategies. So I think the point to note is that the FM, the facilities guys, the operators absolutely have to be engaged from the outset of the building. You can't leave it to the last minute and kind of then go and contract someone and expect them to have that knowledge that you've built up over 6 years of the life. We also use the standard project gateways as a good communication tool to say we've got to a certain phase, now you review these designs, feedback to us, and then we can move on to the next phase. So the project, very high level deliverables and aims. Everything you heard this morning about flexibility, about client experience, about the benefit back to the occupants. A lot of the times, young people moving to London, living in very cramped spaces in London, because that's all you can afford these days, suddenly their work environment becomes their whole life. Their whole life revolves around that. You go outside, they socialise, the gym's in the building, all of the technology, they go out, you can cycle in, shower, all of that had to be provided to attract the best staff. Wages are aligned, everything else is aligned, so you have to have something a little bit extra, and that all comes about the location of the facility and what you provide within it. So, soft landings. When we thought about what does soft landings really mean to us, and again, for me, a little bit sceptical. Once soft landings started to be talked about, it was talked about as if the consultants, the constructors, would stay on with the project and soft land you into the building, and that's not what we wanted. Also, the industry is fixated on M&E, everything, O&Ms, everything's about M&E and the performance of M&E, but actually we've got millions of pounds worth of AV assets, we've got millions of pounds worth of catering assets. So it was about engaging not only the M&E guys, but the cleaners, the reception staff, every single one of them going through their own journey, their own, what does a client experience look like? What does an hour by hour walkthrough of the building look like from a client, from a user, from a facility operator? And so we looked at all of those different functions and work streams and assembled them into a working group that we called Soft Landings. I think in reality we're talking about operational readiness. I think the BISRI is very good, but that it's not geared towards operationally readinise the building and making sure it functions. We had an overall objective for when the first person moved in the building, within 15 minutes they'd be working, and we achieved that. So we formed a working group. We had to think about the current state, the number of buildings we had currently. Then we would grow because we'd bring on the new building, but we'd still retain the old buildings. And then eventually, by the end of the year, we'll be back down to the core buildings. So we thought about every state through the transition. And the aim was to embed all of the requirements into the design. So we had to stage the programme such that we could understand our requirements and make sure they're delivered into the design and responded to. It's no good, particularly as a project guy, being told after you start building that actually we wish we had a staircase in there. And bear in mind the size of the construction, we also had to think about the base build. So what could we build into the base build that would minimise the changes in the fit out, that then would be making sure that the operational requirements of the building was embedded. So we use, as I said, we use the framework anyway as a communication tool to the business, to the users, so they understand where we are in the process, because people don't understand that actually you're buying furniture 2-3 years possibly before you've even moved into the building. You're buying infrastructure. The infrastructure is designed, it's procured, it's being tested, and then they start to think about changing it. Well, that's too late. So we took them through that process so that they knew exactly where we were. We obviously at the time we didn't have our own kind of guide, so we thought about what does it mean to us. So being involved from the inception, informing the building design, what do we want day zero, and then mobilising the services and obviously evaluating the services. And this is very high level key things that we had to think about in the building. I'm going to focus on this part just to give you a little flavour of the journey that we took. Obviously that's a detailed one. I can share this with you afterwards, but at the end of I'll summarise that there's a lot of good people that have already done that for you in some operational guides. So again, talking about the programme, making sure that at our stage of informing the building design, the base build deliverables, obviously demolition, construction, start building. We kept our design stages one stage behind, so we had some really good idea of what we wanted from the building, so that if we did need to make a change, we could incorporate it into the base build. I think there was 77 base build changes, and a lot of them were big structural changes that we would never have attempted, I think, in the 71 weeks that we had to fit it out. And then obviously by doing so, we also informed the fit-out design, so we made sure within every specification all of our requirements were met. So first stage, I called it optioneering. So talk to the operators. They've all got great ideas of how the building should operate, the best UPS, the best chillers. We took all of that on board. Sometimes we didn't use it for good reason, for space, for technical reasons, but at least they were part of the decision-making process. People talk about you build a building for 2, 3, 6 years, you live in it and operate it for 25 years. You do not want to sit next to an operator for 25 years, them moaning about decisions you made 6 years ago that's wrong. Now everyone knows why the decisions were made, and they're on board. We also did some mock-ups. We did some tests. We had a great idea that we were going to use crockery instead of paper cups. We used thousands and thousands of paper cups. Not particularly sustainable, so we had 2-minute dishwashers. But we had to trial that in our own space to make sure that when you move 6,000 staff in, you're not going to have a problem when you try it in the new building. In hindsight, it didn't work because we couldn't change the cups, clean them quick enough to be able to respond to the demand, and people were leaving them on the desk. But we still have the aspiration to do that in the future, so we've built the infrastructure in so that we can just take a cupboard out, put the dishwasher in, the pipes are there, the power's there. So we thought about all of that. Centralised MAL, again, we wanted to get rid of the guy walking around with a trolley, so we had centralised MAL points on the floors. We talk about agile, you've got agile lockers, you've got lockers in the gym, you've got lockers in for the runners. We wanted to make sure that was one system, not loads and loads of disparate. One's on a key, one's on an intelligent fob. So we made sure that every one of those different facilities had the same locker system. And water distribution, instead of having lots and lots of local water boilers, let's have it central, water systems, let's have a central system and let's pipe it to the vending stations rather than trying to treat loads and loads of multiple vending areas. When we talk about intelligent building, the building infrastructure, the BMS, the lighting controls, it was essential that was all on a single network. So we made it part of the corporate network. And again, there's some real challenges with that. Every single one of those systems has a graphical user interface that is clunky. It's bitmaps. It's not interfacing with your BIM models. It's not user intuitive. So we made sure that everyone had the same look and feel. It was very intuitive. It's all icon based. So again, really simple things to introduce into the design that doesn't cost money, but actually gives a much better building. Oh, sorry. Telling me the battery's running low. I've got 10 minutes, I think. So processes, these define the way we do things. So it's very important when I've assembled the group, I said to them, give me every single one of your processes. Let's have them in a central repository for once. We looked at those processes, we compared them, we looked for opportunities to be more efficient. So, for instance, a security guard walking around the floors every half hour, bringing the lights on. Then an engineer walking around testing their rooms. Well, actually, why don't we do one walk round? Why don't we change the lighting controller so out of hours, they only come on for 5 minutes and then they go off again. So you don't walk around every half hour and leave the building lit up like a Christmas tree and getting criticism from people outside. So we looked at the processes. We looked for touch points in those processes, and I'll come on to that. But it was, again, opportunities where we could be more efficient in the way we do things. We agreed a common structure. So we're on the journey now to a single ISO 9001 system for all of our processes. So when I talk about touch points, so we try to articulate them in a people, building or technology touch point. So again, once we had all of our processes all in a very nice spreadsheet, we looked at our different functions and we said, is there touch points between what we do in our processes? A couple of examples, the lighting control one. We realised that we've got security tours, we've got engineering tours. That touches technology, it touches the space. Simple one is that every contractor coming into the building has to have a pass. They have to go through a permit process. So we built a contractor's office where the permit office is, where the isolations can be carried out, where the inductions then can be carried out. So, and we made sure, can we video the induction? Do we have to have a guy standing there every 5 minutes, 2-3 times a week doing inductions? Have we got the space for it? Have we got the facility to make sure that the flow works between the contractor coming into the office, being signed in, being taken down to a welfare, facilities for tea and coffee, and then being taken to the floors quickly to do whatever activity they need to do. So there was lots and lots of them. And we also looked at the intelligent building side of it and said, blue sky thinking, what would you do with the AV? What would you do with the blinds, the lighting? And try to make sure that we captured every wish that the operators could have, and assemble them in a specification. So we talk about the operational spaces. Again, lots and lots of people hold on to spaces, and when you look at the whole requirement of storage, engineering spaces, workshops, we took those requirements in terms of spatial requirements, turned them into room data sheets. There's not enough value that's given to these room data sheets. They're absolutely essential for articulating what you want from those spaces in terms of power, in terms of storage, in terms of racking. I think architects don't get what operators need. So it's important that as a team we understood that. It's important to know that architects and operators number the rooms differently. So we embraced that and we said, right, we'll have the architectural room, but we'll have the operational names of the rooms. We made sure that in the client meeting rooms on the intelligent panels that you've got the room name, but you've also got the architectural name, because the BMS has been built on the architectural names. So when a client phones up and says, I've got a problem in room 179, room 18, generally the operators have to start looking at plans. So we made sure we embraced that difference and made sure that both in the base build and the fit out, we made them use the same numbering system. Whereas traditionally they would do theirs and we'd then come and number the fit out rooms completely different. So we gave that structure to the data. Again, communications, again looking for touch points, but this time in terms of visual technology and voice perspective. So we exactly the same process, looked at how we communicate as operators, how we communicate with the business, the help desk, how we raise tickets, make sure that everyone was on the same radio system. It sounds really simple, but for a long time we were all operating on different platforms in terms of communication. Risk, I'll fly through this very quickly, but obviously risk comes in everything we do, but embracing and understanding your risks as operators early on means that, again, you can try to design them out, and if you don't design them out, at least you know what your residual risk is. Got 7 minutes on the battery. Asset systems, again, we had people using Excel spreadsheets, we had people using Word, we had people using intelligent CMMS systems. Let's use one system. There's not an industry standard way of tagging assets out there. So we had to come up with our own. We had to make sure we didn't have duplicates. We had to make sure that they could be embedded in the BIM model, dropped into our CMMS tool. Drawing protocols, all of those requirements need to be in your BIM plan. Again, logistics, work, understanding flow, and lots and lots of people have traffic management systems, vehicle booking systems, but it tends to stop at the top of the ramp. We need that for the loading bay. We need to make sure that from the ramp to the loading bay to the lift, it's all booked for you. You've allocated it. You're not holding it in the storage spaces. We're not building up boxes and boxes on the stores. Make sure that the loading bay managers understand their roles. They've got the technology to be able to make the smooth transition from delivery to the desk. So a very quick fly through, but just to conclude, with this working group, day-to-day priorities are always going to take precedence. You have to give them the time. You have to invest in this, because if you don't, you'll just go from one building to the second doing exactly the same. These buildings and the understanding the complexity of the intelligent building, the BIM, the soft landings, the design, it takes time to really embrace and understand the full complexity of what is a very big and complex building. I've said all of that, but what you have to do is make sure it's not, the scope's not creeping, the budget's not creeping. That's why it's essential that if you need it, it needs to be in the design, otherwise you're not getting it, because we don't have time, we don't have the funds to keep taking on board these requirements as you think of it. So do it from the outset, embed it into the design. It's cheaper, it can be delivered, and you get what you want. We did an agile pilot. We got over 3,000 staff working agile. You've got to trial that in your existing buildings. You've got to get people used to it. Invite them over. Test your theories. The IFM program had a huge impact of incorporating that halfway through the program. Fortunately, we overcame it, but think about when you engage your service providers. don't leave it till 6 months before you move in. It's far, far too late. And this is all about change management, and you have to get the operators to embrace it. You're going to come up against that self-interest, the resistance, but if you take them on the journey, those barriers fall down, and people really embrace change. And we had change managers, we had move managers, all designed to help that transition. Fortunately, Biffam have produced a guide that aligns to certainly the way we did it. I worked along with a lot of other industry professionals in producing this guide, and it kind of gives you a flavour of the structure that we put towards our Softlanding's operational readiness programme, but far more articulate and far more useful to you.